I'm Catherine Eyring, your health and empowerment coach. And if there was one word I would use to describe my week with this continuous glucose meter or CGM, it would be empowered. That's how I felt about it. So I do believe, and I'm grateful that I think we are moving more toward a time where people are really desirous of taking their wellness into their own hands. And instead of just going to the doctor for different medicines, just to control chronic illnesses, I think people are starting to ask more of these questions like, what did I do to get myself into this position I'm in now? What do I need to do to get myself into better health? So I recently posted on Facebook, food poisoning. What did I eat today? And then there's chronic illness. What did I eat this year? What did I eat the last few years, or maybe even my whole life? Well, this CGM, continuous glucose monitor, really helped me know if something was a good choice minute by minute. And I would rather personally pay $3.99 once every year or two to wear this and take my health into my own hands than to pay for medicines that control my sugar sins and also have their own side effects. So, as I said last week, the CGMs were previously just for diabetics. Now they are becoming available to all of us so we can correct diabetes or pre-diabetes. We can prevent it from happening as well. So the doctors who are working in proactive healthcare versus sick care doctors, they are really recommending these highly now because we get instant feedback that helps with our behavior changes. Intellectually, I would say I think I know a great deal about how blood sugar works, but to experience this in real time this week was a big learning curve for me. I think anyone who's been through one of my challenges, who's had all the education about blood sugar and how it works and that, would easily be able to use a CGM, I think, with no problem, because I know I've already taught you a lot about blood sugar, and I think it would just work out really well and it would flow well for you as it did for me. Now, I looked at like, what was the negative side of this experience? And the only negative thing I could come up with was my obsession with it, which was a big time suck for the first few days. I mean, I was just continuously looking at my continuous meter all the time, scanning it. Like, what's happening now? Okay, I'm really tired. What's happening now? So this was just the first few days, and then I continued to be very diligent about putting in my food or drink, activity, but I wasn't scanning as much. So I have totally more relaxed with it now and really enjoyed it. There is no pain. There was no pain when it was attached to my arm. I never felt it. Just want you to know, didn't catch on any sleeves or anything like that. I didn't go swimming. I didn't have any concerns with water, but I am completely unaware that actually I'm wearing this on my arm, which was a surprise to me because I thought I would feel it more, but I didn't feel it at all. So on the positive side, there's so much for me to say about this. It became a fun game for me, as well as a distraction. But the app that goes with this CGM gives you a score. So you have a score for each meal or drink, and you also have a score for the day. So your score can be between 1 and 10. And so as I was getting better and figuring that out, I was really having fun with that as well. So another cool thing is you have a live nutritionist who will message you really seems like as often as you want, because I went back and forth a bit with the woman I had. And he or she then looks at your food scores and looks at what you put in there for your foods. And they will ask questions or make suggestions. So I made sure that I told my new friend right away that I was going to be doing a lot of experimenting. So my nutritionist named Marie would say things like, Catherine, was that buckwheat pasta an experiment or is that a typical meal for you? So that she could possibly give me some advice. And by the way, it was an experiment because typically if I'm going to have pasta, which I don't generally have like your regular white pasta, the flour pasta, but if I were to have any kind of pasta, I would typically have it with a meat sauce so that I would make it slower going into my blood sugar. But I did not on purpose. I had buckwheat pasta with just tomato sauce just to see. This Marie, she's been really great to work with. And so I wanted to kind of read to you a message from her when I asked about the glucose spikes during my workouts. And I just have to say that was my biggest surprise, how high my blood sugar goes when I work out. I know that after we work out, that our blood sugar is stabilized and lowered. I knew all that, but I didn't know that your blood sugar can spike really high during a workout. So her answer was, during exercise, our glucose can increase and rise up to 160. That can be completely normal and okay. Now 140 above that is really where I'm thinking that's danger range. That's into diabetic territory. She said, we only start to be concerned if the numbers were frequently hitting above 180 when you exercise. While there's a transient increase during exercise, you should see a pattern of decreased glucose values the rest of the day from exercising. Physical activity of all sorts, but particularly weight training, helps to increase insulin sensitivity. So just a reminder about insulin sensitivity, because not everyone here has been through my classes too. So one of like the biggest problems we have in the US is that our population is becoming insulin resistant. So insulin is the hormone that's often referred to as a key that unlocks the cells so the blood sugar moves from your bloodstream into the cells to be used for energy. But insulin resistance means that insulin can't keep up, and then eventually no amount of insulin can move the glucose to the cells. The cells become resistant to accepting the glucose from the bloodstream. Your advanced insulin resistance then is prediabetes and diabetes, but it also contributes to our inflammation, oxidative stress, and these are what underlie other things like cancer and Alzheimer's as well. Okay, so moving on, as far as hunger goes, I found it interesting that every time I felt hungry, I was on a downslope and I didn't feel any other strangeness to me. I just thought, oh, I just feel like eating. But it was interesting because I always teach about the sugar roller coaster and the cycles and how we don't want to be up and down like that. But I didn't really realize at what degree and how small the slope can be when you start to feel hunger, or at least let me say personally that I did, because I didn't eat normal meals. I kept trying something and then I'd wait a couple hours and then I'd try something else. So I was doing more of a grazing, which is not typical for me and it's not good for us. It's not, I mean, they used to suggest it all the time. And now we know that is really not good for our body because it's just overworking the body all the time and the insulin. Another big plus with this was that it connected with my Fitbit. that was a surprise. So I could look at the app and I could see how many steps, and the app was aware of when I was asleep. And so I could look at that. As far as sleep goes, on the day that I slept my very best, I had scored a 10. It was a perfect day for me. So another thing it does, it tracks macros, which is, your proteins, your fats, your carbs. That was such a bonus because I'm always curious, do I eat enough protein? And so it tracks my protein. As long as I'm telling it what food I'm eating, I was tracking it. So that was helpful. Now I'm going to give you some results. So when I work with people, I always suggest have a little bit of nuts with you all the time. So I can tell you when I had a handful of cashews, I scored a 10. My sugar stayed very stable. It was great. When I would have a glass of milk, and remember, I drink full fat, unpasteurized milk when I do drink milk. And this week I did on purpose, scored a 10. The only time it didn't was when I was already way up there with buckwheat noodles. When it came to some breakfast foods, I had 2 toast with butter, and I thought that should be okay. That butter would slow it down. I scored a 4 on that. So then I did it again the next day, and I added 2 eggs, and it still scored a 4. And this is with Ezekiel bread, and that, it's a very clean bread, and it has like a higher level of protein. So really that was a surprise for me. This morning I had steel cut oats. I don't even care for them that much, but I wanted to be able to give you a score. And that was an 8, but I made sure I put a chunk of butter in there as well. Now, another day I had the eggs and I added beets because I often have vegetables with my breakfast. So I added beets, and I'm thinking beets, I think of them pretty sweet, but I scored a 10 with beets with my eggs. I had cheese and seed crackers, not like your grain crackers, seed crackers. That was a 9. I had 2 dates alone and scored only a 4. But when I ate those dates with almond butter, I was at a 9. It was good. So interesting to know that the nut butter could slow it down. I tried the apple cider shrub. Some of you that have worked with me, I've taught you how to make this. And it was good to know that it scored between an 8 and a 10 every time I drank some of that, but I always drink it within 10 minutes of my meal. And I went to dinner out and just ate what my friend was having: lobster bisque, fried Brussels sprouts, which I love Brussels sprouts normally, and homemade chips. That was an 8, which really helps me remember there's different ways to analyze your food. That didn't mean it was healthy. So we'll get into that a little more. Okay, a big surprise when I had an orange all by itself, and it was a very small orange. It was a 3. Low score, really peaked it. And it does make sense. We know, what do they give someone when they have low blood sugar? Orange juice, right? So, but here is a big surprise. I had a cup of tea with honey on an empty stomach. So I had no protein, no fat with it. It was my highest spike all week long. So sometimes people think, well, I just have honey with my stuff. And I say, honey is still sugar. A sweetener is still a sweetener. It is. I peaked at 209 for that. And that was my very highest score. So the funny thing is, that was higher than birthday cake. So on Saturday was a birthday party I went to, and I just decided I'm going to do what all the other 100 people are doing in this party. Well, I haven't had fast food burger in so many years. I don't even know when, but I did it. And I ate cheeseburger in the bun and then followed it with birthday cake, yes, I scored a 1. So it was not my highest peak, but that kept my blood sugar level up in diabetic range for 4 hours. So I always teach about looking at the nutrition of foods. We want to eat nutrient dense foods. We want to eat high quality ingredients, anti-inflammatory foods, colorful foods for vitamins and polyphenols, and we want to stay away from toxic stuff and inflammatory foods. So I want to take a look at some of the foods I ate in a different way that's like not just about sugar too. So if we look at that dinner with the Brussels sprouts and chips, this is not my normal at all because I'm too fully aware that those are fried in a deep fryer with junk oil that is inflammatory. And who knows what kind of oil, and who knows how long it's been since the oil has been changed even, right? So that was just a good way to take a really healthy item like Brussels sprouts and make it a low quality item. So again, this is part of like re-educating ourselves. And we think, well, I'll just get these Brussels sprouts on the menu, but they were deep fried. They weren't coated, but they were deep fried. So not a health food. Burger and fries, again, I think it's been years, but even if that meal had scored a 10, I wouldn't want to eat it. So I just want to help you know why I would not. That bun is made of enriched white flour. So we know it's low quality. All the nutrients have been stripped out of it. And that wheat has been desiccated, dried up with Roundup glyphosate. So it's a highly toxic item. All American wheat is grown that way. We don't have genetically modified wheat. We have Roundup wheat. It is sprayed to dry the crop and then they take the grain. So I really don't like having American wheat unless it's an ancient grain, unless it's organic. Now, the other thing would be the meat on that burger. When you have a place like that, that meat is going to be cows that were in a feedlot. They were probably miserable. They were fed antibiotics. They were probably almost sick. They just try to keep them alive long enough. I'm sure you've heard enough. It's a sad, sad state. And we might not think about that, but anytime you eat that kind of restaurant meat, that is what it is. So that's not something I do often at all. I don't want to support animals being abused that way. And they are also fed unnatural foods. They feed those animals GMO foods in the feedlots. The cheese on the burger was very unlikely to be real cheese. That was some kind of a processed cheese food, like Velveeta. It's not real. So there are so many ways to look at it. Now, when it comes to the cake, same thing, white flour, not good, toxic, but the frosting, probably Crisco or something. Who knows what that was made of? And then in addition to that, I love the flowers. If I'm going to do this, corner piece for me, please. And the dyes that they use here in the US are considered toxic and banned in other countries. So it's not very likely they were using vegetable dyes. So just other things to think about. And that's always what I teach. Like there's so many ways to look at food because this is just not the real food that we grew up on or that our parents grew up on. Okay, so thankfully I know my body detoxes naturally, and now I am just supporting it with its detox this week. I'm moving on to healthy food. I'm going to see if I can't score a 10 now every day for the next 7 days. I'm seriously going to go for a 10. So thank you for letting me share. I'm going to open for discussion now.